What was the Yo Mama joke that ended all Yo Mama jokes? I worked as a pediatric nurse at a children's hospital, and the kids at the amputation ward didn't hold back on anyone. The kids there had been through more surgeries than most people have birthdays, but they still found ways to laugh. The ringleader was Leonard, but everyone called him No Leg Lenny. He was 12 years old with spiky black hair and had lost his right leg in a car accident 2 years ago. Lenny ruled that ward like a tiny Dave Chappelle. Every time a new kid arrived, he would wheel himself over in his custom wheelchair that had flame stickers all over it. He'd size them up and let the jokes formulate in his head. The other kids would gather around because they knew what was coming. Lenny's specialty was Yo Mama jokes, and he delivered them with perfect timing that I think would make Seinfeld jealous. I remember when 8-year-old Sherman arrived after losing his left arm in a farming accident. The poor kid was still adjusting to the reality of his situation and barely spoke above a whisper. His parents had just left after visiting ours, and he was sitting alone in his bed staring at the wall. That's when Lenny rolled up with his crew of 4 other kids trailing behind him. Lenny parked his wheelchair right next to Sherman's bed and gave him that signature smirk, the one that meant a roast session was about to begin. Hey, new kid, make sure when you laugh your other arm doesn't pop off. Ready? Sherman just blinked at him with these huge puppy dog scared eyes. Without waiting for an answer, Lenny launched into his routine. Yo Mama so clumsy she tripped over a wireless network. The other kids giggled, but Sherman just stared. Lenny wasn't discouraged though. He never was. Yo Mama so slow it takes her 2 hours to watch 60 minutes. More laughter from the goons, but Sherman pulled his blanket up higher. I was checking vitals on another patient, but keeping one eye on the situation. This was Lenny's way of welcoming new kids, and usually they started laughing after a few jokes. It was his twisted way of saying you're one of us now. But Sherman wasn't cracking even a tiny smile. Lenny wheeled closer and his voice got louder. Yo Mama so old her birth certificate says expired. The other kids were practically falling out of their wheelchairs laughing. Tommy, who was missing both legs below the knee, was slapping his bed rail. Sarah with her prosthetic hand was wiping tears from her eyes, but Sherman just kept staring at that same spot on the wall. That's when Lenny decided to go nuclear. He cleared his throat dramatically and announced to the whole ward, Yo Mama so ugly when she walks into a bank they turn off the surveillance cameras. The laughter was deafening. Even some of the older kids from down the hall had wheeled over to watch. Lenny was in his element, basking in the attention like a tiny dictator of comedy. But then something changed in Sherman's face. His jaw tightened and his good hand balled into a fist under the blanket. He turned his head slowly to look at Lenny, and when he spoke, his voice was steady and clear. Is that all you got? The ward went dead silent. Nobody talked back to Lenny. He was the king, and everyone knew it. Lenny's smirk faltered for just a second before coming back full force. Oh, you think you're funny, new kid? Let's hear what you got then. Sherman sat up straighter in his bed and looked Lenny right in the eyes. The scared little boy from 5 minutes ago was gone. Yo Mama so stupid she went to the dentist to get a Bluetooth installed. Weak attempt. Some polite chuckles, but nothing more. Lenny's crew looked relieved. Their king was safe, but Sherman wasn't done. He took a deep breath and something shifted in his expression. When he spoke again, his voice carried across the entire ward. Yo Mama so nasty, she's so gassy, she gotta order her farts on Amazon. So ugly she made an onion cry. So fat when she skips a meal the stock market drops. So dumb she climbed over a glass wall to see what was on the other side. The jokes came rapid fire like bullets from a machine gun. Each one landed harder than the last. Kids who hadn't left their rooms in days were peeking out their doors. Even the night shift nurses had stopped to listen. Lenny's face was turning red and his hands gripped his wheelchair arms. Then Sherman delivered the final blow. He leaned forward and in the calmest voice said, Yo Mama so stupid she forgot to visit her amputee son for 8 months. The silence that followed was deafening. Everyone knew Lenny's mom had stopped visiting months ago. She couldn't handle seeing him in the wheelchair and only called on holidays now. It was the one thing nobody ever mentioned. Lenny's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. No comeback came. No witty response or savage burn. Just silence. Lenny's eyes got watery and he spun his wheelchair around and rolled away fast. We heard his door slam shut down the hall. The other kids dispersed quietly back to their rooms. Sherman laid back down and went back to staring at his wall, but I caught a tiny satisfied smile on his face. When no one was looking, I dapped him up.